As we hear this brief and familiar passage from St. Luke's Gospel, we might be tempted to conclude that it's all about expressing gratitude to God or failing to do so. And while it certainly is about that, we still need to pause and reflect to see that there's something even more at work here. Indeed, as Jesus is traveling through Galilee and Samaria on his final journey to Jerusalem, as is depicted in Luke's Gospel, he encounters 10 lepers in the countryside who approach him from a distance because that was prescribed in the Old Testament law. They couldn't approach him. They were unclean. So from that distance, they beg him to heal them. We will learn that one among them is also a Samaritan, thus a despised outsider among the Jews, because his heritage is considered to be impure. It's mixed. And so even if he weren't afflicted with leprosy, he would still be rejected by his Jewish neighbors in Israel as being unkosher, unclean. As a Samaritan, he would have worshipped at the temple on Mount Gerizim rather than at the temple in Jerusalem. We can rightly conclude that he is only associated with this little group because as lepers, they are all outsiders at the moment, forbidden to mingle with others in society, forced to live on the outskirts. So being all in the same rather sorry boat, the other factors that distinguished the Samaritan as an outsider to the Israelites didn't much matter. Yet once healed by Jesus in his compassion for them, the distinctions between the 9 Israelis and the single Samaritan reemerge. Indeed, Jesus knows very well when he instructs the lepers to go to the temple in Jerusalem to be declared clean by one of the priests and then to offer a thanksgiving sacrifice for this healing, that the Samaritan is actually forbidden to do so, as all Samaritans were excluded even from being in the temple precincts, never mind the temple itself. Yet rather than go to Mount Gerizim to be declared clean by the priests of his own right and to offer his sacrifice there, the Samaritan has the insight to realize that God is present in Jesus himself as the one who, through this cure, has freed that Samaritan from being condemned to a life among the living dead, as was the case with all lepers at that time. And so he returns giving glory to God, which he expresses by falling at the feet of Jesus. In other words, recognizing Jesus as divine and so worshiping him. This essential truth somehow escaped the other 9, who, because of their religious tradition that God's dwelling on earth was exclusively in the temple in Jerusalem, were completely blind to the true identity of Jesus. Yet ironically, that Samaritan, whom they and all their co-religionists despised as unkosher, as a half-breed and an apostate, was the one able to see that essential truth. Thus, we should recognize what is a central theme in the Gospel of St. Luke at work in this particular passage, and that is what we call the Great Reversal. This is a theme introduced in the Magnificat at the very beginning of St. Luke's Gospel. Indeed, as Mary sings her praises, the causes of those praise serve as a prelude of sorts to what will be seen in the rest of the gospel. That in the coming of the Christ into the world, things will be turned completely upside down, as the poor and the lowly, as Mary refers to herself, Anoim in Hebrew, are raised up, while the rich and the powerful are dethroned. As a despised Samaritan, the healed leper is also clearly among the Anoim, but he is healed and raised up by Jesus, who explicitly credits the Samaritan's faith as the cause of his salvation. Obviously, this gospel passage and its underlying themes contain an important message also for us in our contemporary world, where people are sadly still labeled as outsiders. They are excluded and removed from the mainstream of society because of perceived differences in them, be it their language, their race, their origin. Yet the gospel teaches clearly that none of these matter at all to Jesus Christ, only that when he looks into the heart of a person, he sees sincere faith. Now, that does not give us further license to discriminate against non-Christians or those with no religious affiliation at all. Rather, it should simply remind us, never judge anyone or discriminate against them on appearances or other superficial characteristics, because we are incapable of seeing what God sees, which is their hearts. Indeed, like the Samaritan in the gospel passage, those we might be tempted to label and exclude as outsiders may, in the end, be even closer to God than we are.